It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, March 19th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that could not be more thrilled that Wayne Simmonds is going to retire a Philadelphia Flyer.
Yeah, he's such a good guy.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can find our show over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So much is happening, Russ. I
Yep,
like
a lot of
for just
news.
a random day in March, but here we are. So Wayne Simmonds announced that he would be retiring, and then he, along with the Flyers, announced that they're going to have him sign a one-day contract and then be honored on April 13th when the Flyers face the New Jersey Devils at the Wells Fargo Center. And of course, that's another team that Simmonds played for.
Yep.
And so happy that they're going to mark the occasion and truly honor somebody who epitomized Philadelphia Flyers hockey while he was here.
Yeah, really good guy. I mean, if you go back to the Winter Classic at Citizens Bank for the AHL game, he was just up in the stands with his girlfriend at the time, just watching the game, like as a regular guy. Like that's sort of what he is. He's a regular guy that happened to be very good at hockey. Um, I know a lot of stories about him. I know his midget coach. I'm good friends with him, and always heard great things about him. But for the interesting thing is without the Kings, he would have no hockey career at all. Dean Lombardi was his first GM, so that's going to be a
Hmm.
big deal um, for Dean. I mean, there was stories about Wayne sleeping out in his car before he was drafted, and all these other things. So really, you have to give a lot of credit to the Kings too for him just starting and having a career, and then the Flyers really being his team.
Yeah, really interestingly, Wayne Simmons ended his career with the same number of goals and assists at 263 for a grand total of 526 points over his over 1,000 game career. He played 584 of those regular season games for the Philadelphia Flyers. So, say the lion's share of his career between 2011 and 2019. And there are so many memories I have of Wayne Simmonds. We talked about Wayne Simmonds pretty recently, actually. I brought him up just because we hadn't really seen a net front presence like Wayne Simmonds since he's been
True.
with the team. And I think that just as a player, there's so many things about him, but as far as his net front presence, his deflection technique was a marvel to behold. And I just tried to figure out how he was doing it all the time.
Well, I mean, the fact that he had such skinny legs, you didn't know how he could stay in the crease to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I always used to marvel at that. When he was on air about a week ago, I tweeted him a picture of him that I took in the locker room where he had a black eye. That was kind of normal, you know. Um, but you did mention the Devils, and it was weird. The first time he played for them when he was in the building, and we were all talking to Wayne
Not
Simmonds.
okay.
Yeah, but it was just, but he was just like the same guy, you knew we would all want to talk to him. He wanted to talk to us. It was fine. Yeah, he just, he never hid from the media. He always said what he wanted to say, wore his heart on his sleeve. He was good. He was good in the locker room. He was good on the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, of course, he was known for his toughness,
Hmm.
and that was the thing is that he was one of those guys that was very skilled, but also would throw down. And
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of Flyers fans, myself included, just really was drawn to him, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, and again, when you could score 30 goals the way he did, um, he made the Flyers power play better for sure. So there was a lot of things like that that he really did add to the club. But yes, the toughness and all that. But we all knew that with the way he played, there was going to be a time where he's was just going to hang it up and he wasn't going to be an old man simply because he just, got the most out of his body and was always going to play these tough minutes. And so I don't know what's his age now?
I don't know, 30 something, right?
30 something. Yeah. Probably like 35, maybe 34. But that's the way it goes. When it's your time, it's your time.
Right, and he mentioned that, the way he played probably did lead to his, an earlier ending to his career than, he might have otherwise, but he had no regrets about it because that's the way he played and that's the way he wanted to play, and he was willing to deal with his career maybe ending a little bit sooner.
Yeah, he is
So
35. And it's not terrible. Listen, it's longer than a lot of hockey players. The average hockey player is probably like 5 to 7 years, and he went way past that. So yeah, he's got no regrets. He's probably going to work with the media. Excuse me, work with the media a little bit, and that's nice. He's got a lot of stories to tell, and yeah, I think nobody has a bad story to tell about him.
no, and of course, I think, some of the standout memories that I have about him as a player, just like there was that time where he got just completely jacked when somebody hit him in the mouth with a stick and he lost like all of his teeth all at
Yeah.
once. But then, finished the game and dealt with the teeth the next day.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was normal for him. I mean, yeah, he never really came out of games. He might miss some time on the bench, but he never really came out of games, and he was a good agitator. I'm sure there'll be stories from other guys that when they went against them, they knew they were going to be in for it that day, and yeah, I mean that's why you wanted Wayne Simmonds on your team.
Yeah, and of course, that last game he played as a Flyer in the Stadium Series
Yeah,
game, right before the trade deadline, when the Flyers had kind of a miracle comeback, and Simmons was, a big part of that. And that whole day, that whole game was just like turned up to 11, right?
yeah, we'll have more fans than usual since it was at Lincoln Financial, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it was. It did. It had a little more drama. It was nice. It was a. He knew he was gone. Like we all knew he knew he was
Hmm.
gone, and so that was a big deal for him. That was a big memory, a big way to leave the city, and he probably never dreamed he would come back and at least do the 1 day contract thing and be able to retire a Flyer. I don't know when that came into discussion. But yeah, I'm sure he was thrilled when if either he thought of it or the Flyers thought of it.
Yeah, I wonder, if this will lead to a Flyers Hall of Fame nomination at some
I mean, it
point.
should. I mean, there's no reason you wouldn't. He was there. They were successful. I mean, he doesn't have a cup, but he did plenty of other things. Was in the cup. So yeah, I mean,
Huge impact on the Flyers playoffs when he was in
yeah,
them. So, yeah, I would hope that that would be an eventuality. I know it always takes a number of years, but, I think that um, it's been interesting watching this team start to honor guys like this and just setting the example that they talked about in management of saying, we're going to create a Flyers family and the honor our alumni and all of this. And I think this is a good step toward continuing, following through on that promise.
yeah. Actually, yeah. I made a mistake there. He came shortly after the cup team, but yeah, I remember when they got him. I was like, yeah, this is a good acquisition of a young player. He had 28 goals in his first year. I mean, he got as high as 32. He had 6, 7 really, really strong years, and that's hard to do when you're also getting PIMS and He had 100 pims like 4 times too, 3 or 4 times. So when you could do that, you've made an impact.
Absolutely. Wayne Simmonds also holds the distinction for me of the only player that I have more than one jersey of. So
Mm.
um, I absolutely have appreciated him throughout his
Now
career.
you've, made every other player sad, but at least Wayne's happy that
All right. Well, like I said at the top of the show, so much is happening. We have a game tonight to talk about. We got some roster changes and some weird lines to talk about. We will do all of that, plus talk about the Phantoms later in the show. And we'll do all of that coming up next.
it's an important point in the season, Flyers fans. The team is in the thick of the playoff hunt, but regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans could also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football when they're in season on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether NHL superstars like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, or Austin Matthews, plus Flyers standouts like Travis Konecny, will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper, so start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms for use for details and locational availability.
On tomorrow's show, we will recap the Leafs game that we are about to talk about. Plus, we'll be answering your mailbag questions. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. Before we get to talking about the Leafs, other Flyers news besides the Wayne Simmonds retirement, Olle Lycksell and Adam Ginning got called back up again.
Shocker.
I know, on emergency loan. I also saw that Ryan Ellis was moved to LTIR.
Yeah, I guess they finally realized they got as much cap money as they could before they did that. That's fine. I guess that's what their plan was all along. But the call ups are nice, but it happened too late again. It's like they could have been there for the last couple. They weren't. Why? Uh, Probably because the coach was giving the veterans every last chance, and gave them too many chances, to be honest. So now at least the young guys. But again, if they're going to get sat and be in a game and out for two, it's not going to be a great thing for them. But I'm happy they at least get the reward.
Yeah, we talked about Olle Lycksell on the show yesterday because he had a tremendous weekend with the
Yeah,
Phantoms, which we're going to get into. So extremely well deserved for him to get called back up. But again, yeah, this bouncing back and forth probably isn't good for him either. And he
no,
should just be with the Flyers at this point. But in the meantime, at practice, because there was an overabundance of forwards there were actually 5 complete lines at practice, with a little of a mix up there. And, of course, John Tortorella doesn't want to talk about the lineup as he has made abundantly clear. But of course, you have to look at them and say, okay, what is going on here? Because Couturier was with Atkinson and Gurianov, and Atkinson and Gurianov have been sort of in and out of the lineup, and so putting Couturier with those 2 raises a lot of questions, right?
it does because Atkinson's not going to play. Gorianov probably doesn't play. Uh,
Mhm.
but Couturier will play. It's just this is for whatever reason John is sending this strong message to Sean, and I don't get it. He's trying as hard as he can. Like we knew there was going to be a point where he would hit a wall this year, right? We all knew it.
Right.
Whether the Flyers wanted to acknowledge it or John wanted to acknowledge it, I don't think he's playing it the right way with him. I don't think he's going to get the best out of him doing it this way. But whatever, he's the coach.
Yeah, I mean, he also said at media availability that he has zero doubts about Sean Couturier and that he always works hard and that he's just never going to question, Couturier's, um, dedication and
Sure,
things
but
like
I'll put
that.
him on the
So,
fourth line, and I'm gonna
right.
minimize his minutes. So what is it? Who cares about the speech then?
Right. Well, that's the thing is like there's a little bit of conflict there between what
Yeah,
he's saying and what's going on. So I think that's just something to keep an eye on for sure. But on the other hand, Bobby Brink is with Scott Lawton and Joel Farabee. And of course, Farabee is like no longer in any doghouse. In fact, he's on like the good list right
yeah.
now. So, and of course, Torts loves Scott Lawton. So by putting Brink with those two, that could be a good sign for Bobby Brink.
No, it's a good sign. I mean, look, the Flyers need offense desperately to play against a team like the Leafs. They saw it last time, so they're gonna have to try and do other things, and this is one of those other things.
Right. And I think that, obviously with offense, we of course have to talk about the power play here. And um, the second unit, which we've talked about quite a bit recently, just because I think that's where the Flyers can do some experimentation, right?
Mhm.
And maybe mix things up a bit. And, again, with Brink in and out of the lineup, having that second unit there with Zamula, who's been consistently there, Tyson Forster, Olle Lycksell, Scott Lawton, and Bobby Brink, like, that's a fairly young second unit overall. I like it. Like, I hope that is a thing.
Yeah, it would be nice for it to be a thing because, yeah, you've got some guys that um, don't have any real preconceived notions of this power play sucking, and maybe could bring it forward. Well, sometimes
Right.
it's the mental part, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's something there.
Yeah, so that's kinda stood out to me from practice, yesterday, and, I think that, there could be some opportunities here, especially, again, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are a very good team. We saw it the last game
Yeah.
that the Flyers played them, but at the same time, Mitch Marner is still out, and so there's going to be some opportunity there with some of the changes to the Leafs lineup. And, I think we know for a fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs are the Stanley Cup champion of overthinking things.
Oh yeah.
And so, I think that they're in a weird spot right now, despite some of their success. And I think there's a little indecision on the Leafs, and that's where the opening is for the Flyers.
I mean, the opening is just you got to outscore them. Like that's that simple. And the Flyers, played them tight for a little while, but then the Leafs just broke through. So they got to try it different, and they can't try and block so many shots. Really, the last game came down to the will of Austin Matthews playing a complete game, and he did. And really, there was no answer for him. And unless they feel like they have an answer for him again, uh, it could be another long day. Like that's just the way it is. So hopefully, they try and change things up, and they get a couple bounces. That's really the way this game can go. As far as who they're going to put in net, I mean, I'm not sure who the Leafs will put in net, but I think it'll be Samsonov just because he beat the Flyers the last time. So probably him against Urson, and again, it'll be interesting. The Flyers, I don't think have played well, and even since going back to the Sharks game, so I'll be looking for just any signs for them just to be playing better.
Right, and the Flyers are 4-5-1 in their last 10. Tampa now has more points than them, sitting in that first wild card spot.
I don't know
The
if you noticed this, but again, we talked about this. The Capitals now have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Flyers.
Yeah, absolutely. The Caps and Isles are right there, just underneath the Flyers in points with games in hand. So
Yeah,
again, we've talked about this gauntlet of games here, but at some point you got to win them,
right. I
right?
mean, it's here. Yeah, um, that's where sometimes the 1 point can really disguise problems. And right now, yeah, I'm sure they'll settle for any points. But when teams have games in hand, you really got to come through with wins. So yeah, this would be a big win if they could get it. This is going to take a major effort, better than anything they put in like the last 3 games.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what the Flyers can do to make it happen and get those 2 points. In the meantime, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms have been very busy this past week, not only with the games, but with some signings as well. So we are going to get into all of that coming up next. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with 3% match. The offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for the legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold from 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker dealer. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. Russ, the Phantoms had a much better weekend this past weekend than they've had in a while, despite getting shut out in the first game of the weekend, 3-0 to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. They had a back-to-back against Providence up in Providence on Friday and Saturday, and they lost in a shootout on Friday, but actually played quite well, I would say, despite the 4-3 loss. And of course, won 5-2 on Saturday
Hmm.
in the game to end all games for the Phantoms.
Yeah, so did pretty well. Still all maybe too little too late, and losing Lycksell and Jennings probably gonna hurt them more than it helps them. But yeah, at least they're putting together some wins.
Right. So Tanner Laczynski was back in the lineup and continuing to play really well. Just had a really successful weekend. Ginning was back with the team for the weekend, and he Lixo played 2 games this weekend. Victor Mete was hurt on Wednesday. Matt Brown is hurt. This team is like there's just a lot of moving pieces and parts here. But if you look at Tanner Laczynski and Olle Lycksell in the lineup together, Tanner had a goal on Friday and a hat trick on Saturday. Olle Lycksell had 4 assists on Saturday, a goal and an assist on Friday. Them together on a line with Adam Brooks on Saturday combined. So Tanner had those 3 goals, Olle 4 assists, Adam Brooks 2 goals and 3 assists, which was a high point for points in a game for Adam Brooks there. So it wasn't even the fact that Lycksell and Laczynski had good games; it's they did it together.
Right. Right. I mean, that's a big deal. It is. And Brooks a good player. I mean, he's had NHL time. Um yeah, I mean, it's really it's good to see Lycksell did what he did. I wish he didn't have to do that to have gotten the call up, because I felt like he had done enough the last time. But yeah, he put the exclamation point on, so good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did actually move up to 6th place in the
There you go.
division. They've been in 7th for what seems like forever.
An
Uh,
eternity.
but it's mostly because Springfield just has completely fallen apart. But we'll take it. We'll absolutely take it. But with 14 games left, like everything counts, right?
Yeah. It's upward mobility, but yeah, now you got to win 12 out of those games, at least 12 of them, to
12 of
have a
14 is going to be a tough assignment.
yeah. But I just feel like that's what it's going to probably take.
Yeah, and in the meantime, the Phantoms signed 2 players to PTOs for the remainder of this season, and then AHL contracts for next season as well. So that's interesting because we've been talking about, having the right AHL players around the team and around the prospects. And there's two guys that have big Penn State connections, so that's interesting. With a little bit of local flavor here. But Tyler Gratton, who's both forwards, by the way, Tyler Gratton,
Yeah.
who is the younger brother of Chris Gratton, different Chris Gratton than you're
Yes.
thinking of. We've talked about this, but he's the strength and conditioning coach for the Phantoms. And Jacques Bouquot was signed as well, another forward. They had like kind of ships passing in the night college careers because Jacques Bouquot, he played for Vermont in
Hmm.
college, but then did his fifth year, with a bunch of these college guys getting fifth years because of COVID. He did his fifth year at Penn State, whereas Tyler Gratton played his career at Penn State, but did his fifth year at Arizona State. So
Yeah.
that's where there wasn't really overlapping, but they're both 24 years old. They're solid college hockey players who are primed for an AHL career. But I just found it interesting that they're signing these guys now.
Well, I mean, there's other players out there. I mean, you remember Zach Bookman, who I talked about in his draft year, having 102 points for Brooks in the HAHL. Like, he's available, and he had 28 points in 33 games as a defenseman. I'd prefer to sign that guy, but that's all right. I mean, it's not a bad signing. It's just there are other guys out there, and I don't think you always have to kind of stick close to home or look for these 6'2" guys. There's other players out there.
Yeah, and it's like I'm not questioning these guys. I haven't seen them play.
No,
So
I've seen Gratton play. He's okay.
yeah,
He's okay. Penn State's a decent team. Guys have
yeah.
to be able to skate on Penn State. They've dipped in the last few years. They got eliminated early. But no, he could play a little bit. It's fine. I'm just saying I see a different level of talent of guys out there, and I'm surprised they're not going for them. But maybe they are, and they're just not getting lucky. It's possible.
Right. And yeah, I'm just questioning the timing. I'm not questioning these guys as hockey players, but given the kind of short bench that the Phantoms have had recently, I'll be interested to see, if and how they are brought in and where they show up in the lineup and what prospects they may or may not be playing with. So, with those 14 games left, I think that's something important for everybody to assess.
Yeah, no doubt. It gets them playing time, and they get a jump on next year, and that's good. That's positive.
Yeah, and on the blue line side of things, they decided to go internal, and called up Darren Brady and Mason Millman from Reading. So,
Well, that's good for Millman. I mean, that's
yeah,
fine. I
yeah,
still wonder what his career is going to be like with the Flyers, but I know he could play a little bit, even if he's a longer project. But we'll see. Hopefully, he gets the playing time.
yeah, and we're looking for the Phantoms to get a jump on the power play, which had been good earlier in the season, but they
Yeah,
went 0 for 11 this weekend. Despite scoring a lot of goals, they were just even strength their empty net. So I think that that'll be something to take a look at with some of these new guys and see if they can contribute there as well.
yeah, no doubt.
The Phantoms have 3 games this week. Wednesday against Springfield, who was, as I talked about, not playing well pretty recently, so that should be a good opportunity for some points. Then they're going to play Bridgeport on Saturday and Wilkes-Barre Scranton on Sunday. Hopefully, we
Mhm.
can get 6 points out of the weekend and go from there. That will do it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow recapping the game against the Leafs. We'll answer your mailbag questions. So get them in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.